Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle. Once again, it is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeart radio application. Download today. It is free. The website, put the .com on it, doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com, 803-450-0086. The Clemson Tigers heading into a weekend tilt against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Coming up on the program in hour number 2, we'll be joined by legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret, who is sure to impart an incredible amount of wisdom on us about this matchup between Clemson and Georgia Tech, and also take a little look back at the loss of his alma mater, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, to your Clemson Tigers, to which, I think it's rather unfortunate, I think that the pressure that exists for a guy like Marcus Freeman is, in my opinion, undue. And if I was Notre Dame, I know there were some fans frustrated with the way they closed out the first half. There were some fans that are certainly disappointed with the fact that they only had 10 players on the field defensively in the waning moments against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like, all of that, okay, is a part of the season and the early tenure for Marcus Freeman. But from my perspective, I see a guy that I think can have a ton of success there if he's given the right amount of time. I think there have been some early flashes. I think you can see that, the team wants to play hard for him. It just has not worked out in all accounts. And I think that when you look at programs around the country, whether it's Clemson, Alabama, anybody that's had a lot of success, the majority of those teams have either had the torch passed to the next generation without much angst. I'll give you an example. And certainly the end of Urban Meyer's time at Ohio State wasn't the best of times and the worst of times, right? Like we talked about with the Tale of Two Cities. But it was not a good point, but they were loaded, and the handoff was made to a guy in Ryan Day who kept the program on, that top shelf, if you will. You look at when Bob Stoops left Oklahoma, and it was handed to Lincoln Riley. And Riley kept it not just very much afloat, very competitive nationally, college football playoff, all of that good stuff, all surrounding that program, even after the transition. And it's still, and this is the other thing for that program, right? It still exists with Brent Venables there. And so even still, there are programs out there that have had incredible amounts of success through the decades of college football. But their fan bases, I should say, lack patience. And we'll talk with Tim Bourret about that because, I think the situation at Notre Dame is much more difficult than it once was. And I think the future for Notre Dame is going to be a unique one because I think the question has to be asked, how many years will the Fighting Irish be willing to make the college football playoff as long as, again, the format stays what it's currently set up to be? How many years will Notre Dame continue to go into the playoff and have to play an opening round game and not get that coveted bye? And if you watch enough pro football, you know how valuable that bye week is. And again, Notre Dame in the current setup of the college football playoff, if they were eligible in the 12-team playoff, they will have to sit out. Or excuse me, they will have to play an opening game. They won't get the benefit of sitting out and having a bye week. How long are you going to do that before you go, yeah, you know what? We'd prefer to have a bye week. Text line is available, 803-450-0086. Phone line is also available. Mark chimes into the program. My good buddy, he says, just put Notre Dame in the Pac-12 by themselves. How about just make it the Pac-3? Put them, Oregon State, and Washington State. They can just all three play each other and call it a season. Call it a day. I don't know what's going to – that is – you talk about an interesting dynamic with the future of the college football playoff. That is one to keep in mind. And how ironic is it that in the year that the Pac-12 is essentially going away, that they are so well thought of nationally. I mean, that's the other piece of this, the proverbial future puzzle of the college football, of college football that we've kind of yet to dissect and digest. And will teams from the Mountain West get a boost in? If you are Washington State and Oregon, though, you have to spend every dime available figuring out how you can hold on to the entity that is the Pac-12 and a seat at the college football playoff. And we've talked about here on the program pretty extensively, maybe more than anybody, about how it hasn't worked out so well for TCU, Houston, and UCF as they've made the jump up from the Group of Five to the Power Five. And I wouldn't expect that any teams in the Mountain West would necessarily make a huge jump that would make you go, oh, man, we really been missing that team at the Group of Five level. But looking at the Mountain West football teams right now, or the teams that play football there, let me put it that way. The teams that play football in the Mountain West, in terms of the ones that, might be competitive, right? I would think Colorado State, just kind of based off of what I've seen from them, feel like the one that would be the most competitive. Air Force, I shouldn't forget them, would be another one. They're 8-1. Fresno State's 8-1 this year. Over the long haul, I would say they would be one. UNLV's never been a great football program. Wyoming's had some sporadic years. Boise State, I remember what they did. Not necessarily what they've done. San Jose State, Utah State, Nevada, New Mexico, San Diego State's had some years in Hawaii. It's not the worst idea. There's not major players or teams that I think would have a greater impact than UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. I may have said TCU earlier. I don't know why. If I did, I apologize. But the teams that made the jump up from the American Athletic Conference to the Big 12, we talked about the stats here on the program yesterday of how difficult it's been for them. But if you are Oregon State and Washington, you have to hold on to that name. And then what you have to do is figure out how to bring in these teams in which you should be, quote, better than. And if you're better than those teams and you can hold on to the Pac-12 name and you're allowed to keep your seat at the college football playoff, then Oregon State and Washington State would likely be in a situation similar to what I think people feel like Clemson and Florida State have right now in the Atlantic Coast Conference, that most of the years, one or both of those teams would be competing to get into the top 12. So the leadership at those two programs out west, I mean, they have to take this to the nth degree. They can't allow the Pac-12's name to go away, or the Pac-12's bond and the security that is provided to the Pac-12 by the college football playoff vanish. Because if you do, then all of a sudden you become for lack of a better term, a group of 5 team. And what we see is that the group of 5 cannot compete at the Power 5 level consistently because UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, and BYU, to add them into the mix as well, have not fared well in the Big 12. So Oregon State, Washington State, no matter what it takes, you got to keep the Big 12 alive.
I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
Again, it is the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk, 803-450-0086. Well, last night, switching gears just a little bit, did you see the Clemson Tiger men's soccer team? You know, the women got their first ever in the history of the program. Now, it's only dates back to about 1993, 94, sometime around when I arrived in Tigertown. But the women's team got their first ever #1 national seed. That's incredible. The men's team last night just absolutely hammered Louisville 5-1. Ousmane Silla was phenomenal. His 4th career brace, scoring 2 goals in just a few short minutes. The Tigers were amazing. Their precision with the passing in and around the goal just kept Louisville on tilt. And even late in the ball game, Clemson probably could have put a 6th spot on the board. I can't remember who had the ball. Doesn't really matter, to be honest with you, who had it. But I can tell you this, man. Tried a little slow play the goalie, and it just didn't work out. He really, I think if he had wanted to just drill it, he could have, but it was kind of one of those things where it's almost more embarrassing that he didn't try to just blast it, just try to like deke him and then just dunk it in slowly. I mean, Clemson was already up 5-1, would have been 6-1. I mean, the whole show was over. The Tigers, however, will travel up to Cary, North Carolina for the ACC championship game that'll be played against North Carolina, and it's going to be broadcast on ESPNU at noon. And that game, is that game on Saturday or Sunday? I didn't see the date on it. Let me see if they got it on the schedule yet. Sunday at noon. So ESPNU Sunday at noon, Clemson and North Carolina for all the marbles in the ACC. And if you win in the Atlantic Coast Conference in soccer, it's about like winning in the Atlantic Coast Conference in basketball in the mid to late 90s when you had Duke, North Carolina, Maryland playing at like an elite level. If you win this tournament, you got a chance to win the whole shebang, and there's a great chance that a team that isn't even playing in the conference championship game out of the Atlantic Coast Conference ends up hoisting the national championship. The Tigers, 10-3-4, finished 4-2-2 in the Atlantic Coast Conference, but they will play for the championship on Sunday against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, back to the women's game for a minute, or the women's season, and finishing with a #1 ranking nationally. When Clemson's making their rise, right, in the ranks of college football in 1981, okay, they win the national title. Just a couple of years later, the soccer team, 1984, wins a national title. Dr. I.M. Ibrahim's team wins a national title. 1987, they get another national title. And I don't know if in that era of sports talk radio, or, it definitely wasn't what it is today, right? Like many of you watching on the streams on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. By the way, if you are watching, matter of fact, I'm so bad about this. What a lazy bones. I didn't even share it. So I'm going to go over here and share it real quick. But if you're watching, hit the subscribe, hit the share. Help us continue to grow. But I don't think in 1984 and 1987, when Clemson wins their first 2 soccer national championships, a lot of people are going, well, you know what that is, man? That was the Danny Fordanization of the Clemson athletic department. But you could probably make that argument that Danny Ford and the Clemson football program, because of the success that they had, made that name stand out a little bit brighter. Clemson's able to recruit a little bit better. Well, I don't think it's any irony that the Clemson Tiger football team goes and wins a national title in 2026, wins a national title in 2018, and then you have the Clemson men's program, the men's soccer program, I should preface it by saying, win a national championship, adding to their success. And in addition to that, you've now got the women's program with a number 1 seed. Now, it doesn't mean that the women's program is going to go out and win a national championship. But Mike Noonan won a national title just a couple of years after Dabo Swinney was at 2022, so 2018, 19, the COVID, all. Did I just call it the COVID? The COVID years, all that. But this has been a program that's had a lot of success, and you could make an argument that some of the Daboization of campus, facilities, the money, the brand, all of that helps every program push forward. And so, and I know you're thinking, well, Swanee, that means the men's basketball team better do something in a hurry. According to Graham Neff, last season, if they didn't make the tournament, there was likely to be a change. He felt like the team got hosed, so they kept Brownell. If they don't make the tournament this year, there is not a snowball's chance in a microwave Brad Brownell's coaching at Clemson next season. I don't see how it's possible. Too much heat from the outside at that point. Too much heat from guys like me. Too much heat from IPTAY donors like you. The fact is, there are a lot of people that were disappointed in the fact that Clemson was left out last year. And a lot of those same people that would have been banging on the door to get Brad Brownell out recognized that the team got jobbed. They got hosed. And that's not Brad Brownell's fault, honestly. They schedule well. Obviously, they're in this preseason tournament up in Asheville coming up here in the next couple of days. Hopefully, they'll put up some good results there, and quad 1 and quad 2 and all that junk with the way basketball is now evaluated is certainly unique. It's fair to say. But all that being said, to see the women's soccer program with a number 1 seed, they played in the ACC championship game this past week. I can't help but think that a part of that, and I don't want to take away, from those young ladies and the job that they've done, but I think a part of what you see right now from some of these programs is the fact that Clemson's athletic department and that name, image, and likeness of the program has been at the forefront in a lot of homes around the country. So much so that, if you're a coach from Clemson and you call up a kid that's playing soccer, you say, hey, you want to come to Clemson? Oh, they've heard of you. They have an idea about your brand. And I think that's probably helped Clemson to a degree. Don't forget, Tim Bourret, legendary Clemson SID, going to join us in hour number 2. So make sure you keep it locked. If you're watching the stream as well, we appreciate you. With a quick break, we'll come back with more right here on a Thursday edition of the show that shakes the Southland. I'm going to tell you what, man. I do not get this hot doing this show when I'm not doing it like I'm doing it right now. I'm roasting, bro. Roasting. And I shouldn't be. But I'm cranking the air down. Whew. I gotta check something. I think Amanda Butler gonna come on the show tomorrow. let's see. They just had a huge signee. Amari Berry. See that? Gotta text him my cell phone. All right. Whew. Man, how's everybody doing? Y'all doing all right? What are we talking about today? What's on the agenda? I get this file uploaded real quick. I did get everything connected though earlier today. Oh yeah, this is a good one. I did see this earlier. Hold on. Da, 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 da. By the way, we're not going to do the whole show live here today. Tim Bourret's coming on in about 15 minutes, so we're going to get to him and then jump off of the stream, finish up the final couple of segments in private. All right, here we go. $42. We're good. Back at it on a Thursday, Clemson Sports Talk. That's the website as well. Put the .com on it. Doggone it. Come join us. $1 get you in the door. After that, by the way, that dollar lasts you 3 months. But after that, it's $63.17 for 1 year of coverage, and we put that number on it for all our Gamecock listeners.
So you could continue to peek over the fence at the best radio show in the nation.
The Gamecocks and Vanderbilt will face off over in Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend. But that's not the game that everybody thinks is going to have a pretty bad offensive performance, and it could. Rutgers and Iowa. Rutgers and Iowa. Remember the whole story about Iowa and their offense and and all of that? I mean, it's been terrible. Well, Rutgers and Iowa, the over-under, according to David Purdom at ESPN, is set at a historic number. 28. 28 points. 28 points. Not for one team, for both teams combined. It's the lowest of any college football game since at least 2000, according to ESPN stats and information. And unless that line moves significantly, 2 points, Rutgers and Iowa will be the first game with an over-under total of less than 30 in ESPN's odds database. They don't have data on that. 28 points. 1,500 games over the last 5 years have had a higher first half total. That's how little fans are buying into, or bettors are buying into, this over-under total. And again, Kirk Ferentz and that Iowa ball club are an elite struggling offensive ball club. Of course, there was a situation with his son, Brian, where they had a magic number of, what was it? How many points was it? 325? What was the point total he needed? 25 points a game. I think it was 12 games. Right now they're averaging 19.5, and it's already said, hey, he's not going to be back. Ferentz has been there 7 years as the offensive coordinator, but they're done. He will step down at the end of the season. But he had to hit a huge number. 25 points a game. I think it was a 13-game season if you include a bowl. Is that going to give him the number I'm looking for? Can't remember what it was. That's 325. So, yeah, maybe that was it. And they are just putrid on offense. Rutgers, not much better. Rutgers, however, until a pick six, I think it was a pick six, wasn't it, against Ohio State? Rutgers was in that ball game. The quote here says, this is from Joey Fiesel, who oversees college football odds for Caesars. It says, quote, Iowa's the same every week. Not really good offense, really good defense. So, Rutgers, let's see what they've done offensively this year. 24 against Northwestern, 36 against Temple, 35 against Virginia Tech, 7 against Michigan, 52 against Wagner, 13 against Wisconsin, 27 against Michigan State, 31 against Indiana, 16 against Ohio State. Iowa's favored 62% of the time, -1. The 28.5 right now. The over-under is 28.5. Total points for both teams. I think you got to take the over on this, don't you? Don't you? Iowa beat Northwestern 10-7. Prior to that, they lost to Minnesota 12-10. They beat Wisconsin 15-6. They beat Purdue 20-14. They beat Mississippi State 26-16. Don't you have to believe? I guess they're thinking it's going to be like a, I don't know, 21-7. 17-14 is a winner. I would think you could get there. Iowa is ranked number 22 in the country. They did get beat 31-0 by Penn State and 12-10, as I mentioned, against Minnesota. They've got a matchup with Rutgers this week at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. Then they'll face Illinois and Nebraska. Man, how many points defensively if you in wins? Let's just look at wins. Forget the 31, you know what I mean? Like, take the wins. 14, 13, that's 27, 37, 67, 73. They've given up 80 total points in victories this year. Just 80 points in their 7 wins. So, I mean, defensively, they're jam up. And I wouldn't think that Rutgers or Nebraska is going to put a big spot on the board. I don't even know Illinois if they will. I mean, could they give up less? Oh, I don't want to say less than 100 in their victories because, again, they got to beat 31-0 by Penn State. But if they win out, can they finish the year giving up less than 100 points in victories in the games they win? I mean, that's a decent question. It is an elite defense, and it is an inept offense. 803-450-0086. Just confirmed. Got the text message right there. Amanda Butler, the Clemson women's basketball coach, will be on the program tomorrow. So looking forward to that. Jamie's hanging out with us today. He says, "Where's game day this week?" Game day is going to be over in the Classic City, Jamie, over in Athens, Georgia. Speaking of which, we'll talk a little bit about that matchup when we get back right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Oh, yeah. That's a big game. Like I said, man. That's a huge game because Georgia loses. I don't want to give too much away, but really opens things up. It really does. Woo. Y'all like the off angle shoot? Do y'all like it better? I like it better. All right. Clemson Sports Talk on Twitter at Clemson Sports, the show that shakes the Southland. We got several people hanging out with us online now that we're streaming it up. Probably not going to stream it on Mondays. I will try to do it the rest of the week, though, okay? I will do my best. It is a Thursday edition of the program. Jamie asked before the break where game day is this weekend. I said, it's at the Classic City, Athens, Georgia, home of the back-to-back national champion Bulldogs. And a week ago, when they were facing Missouri, tighter ball game than maybe some people thought it would be, not this guy. I told you. It was a game that was that, and quite frankly, couple of things go Mizzou's way, and they're sitting on top of the SEC East right now. Instead, Georgia's still in control. They will need to lose this weekend against Ole Miss and then lose to Tennessee next week. Now, that's asking a lot, given the fact that this is a team that's, won ball games like you were handing out Halloween candy a little over a week ago. I mean, they're winning a ton of games. They kind of are reminiscent right now of Clemson and Alabama and their dominance in the college football playoff era. And so when you think about this game coming up, first off, how Beck protects the football, to me, much like last season when you looked at the Georgia Bulldogs, quarterback play, protecting the football, wins a lot of games for this group. Because, one, they've got a defense, and they've had a defense that thrives off of forcing turnovers and making game-changing plays. And you tip your cap. I know it's a deeper defensive staff than just Kirby Smart. Obviously, in his capacity as the head coach, much like Nick Saban, they can't spend every waking hour worrying about the defense. But I do believe that the tip of the spear in both of those programs defensively is still led by their head coach. Their mindset, their leadership, the players they recruit to play the game at an elite level. But here's what's kind of funny about this game, okay? Georgia leads the all-time series 32-12-1. And the Dogs, I have to count this up real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Have won 10 straight in the series up until 2016. And Ole Miss won that game 45-14, putting a little beat down on them. That was Hugh Freeze versus Kirby Smart. Now, technically, Ole Miss would come into this game, and in most capacities, we'd say with a one-game streak. I understand it's one in a row. It's not, it's a dot and not a couple in a row, technically. Except that game was one of the games that had to be vacated. So currently, there is no one that has a winning streak in the series. For whatever reason, the vacated win by Ole Miss doesn't give them a victory in the series, but it does deny Georgia a win. Thus, they enter this game having won 10 straight when the coach wasn't sanctioned. And also, it's ironic that last year, Auburn, one of Georgia's top rivals, was very interested, at least it seemed like, very interested in Lane Kiffin before they ended up landing Hugh Freeze, who's now back in the SEC coaching for the Tigers. Now, what I said here yesterday, I will stand by it. Again, Brock Bowers' situation, still not 100% certain on that. I would doubt he's going to play. If I had to guess, I would believe that Georgia thinks they are good enough with Oscar Delp at tight end to beat Ole Miss. The problem comes in if Lane Kiffin's kind of like a shooter, okay? Kind of like the NBA, right? If Lane Kiffin gets in a rhythm as a play caller, he may very well be one of the top 3 offensive coaches in college football right now. Well, I mean, when he's really going. Now, I feel like there were a couple of plays when he was at Alabama under Nick Saban. And that's the other thing, Nick Saban. I just talked about a few minutes ago how good Nick Saban is as a defensive-minded coach. The other aspect of Nick Saban that a lot of people don't talk about is he is the broken coach whisperer. Right? Like, Nick Saban can bring you in. You could have had a tough time in the NFL. You could have had a tough time at another major Power 5 program. Pat you on the back. You're going to be all right, old boy. Just get out there and hustle. And then all of a sudden, you're a major head coach, or you're back in the game, so to speak. But there were times when, in his short stint at Alabama, where Lane Kiffin was just calling whatever plays necessary, and man, he was good. If he gets going, they get some confidence. He becomes a confident play caller. Ole Miss starts to believe in itself a little bit. Maybe gets those Georgia fans a little tight in the tush. You following me? All of a sudden, maybe Ole Miss gets rolling. And that's that 3:30 CBS game. Man, about this time of the year, that game never fails to produce an exciting result. All right, let's see. Patrick chimes into the program. He says the off angle is better. He thought the straight on look was, quote, a little creepy. A little creepy sometimes. All right, well, we'll take that. All right, quick break. We'll come back. If you're watching the show live, this is when we're going to jump right to Tim Bourret. If you're listening on the radio, bottom half or the bottom segment of hour 1 coming up right here on the show that shakes the Southland. All right, we're going to jump to Tim right here. And then we'll pull it down for today. Looks a little creepy. You know what? That was my thing too. Patrick, what I didn't like about the front shoot camera was that, like, if I had to, pull up a stat or whatever, and you guys were here, and, well, you can't see my hand. If you guys were here, and I had to pull up a stat, and that stat was over here, I always felt like I was looking at it like that, and I felt like I wasn't engaged with you. Like I have the capacity to like sit here and do this and that. To me, that's too. I mean, and maybe from this distance, it's not bad if I did do this, but then I look foolish when I go over here and tell you that 31-14 was the largest margin of victory for Ole Miss. Little news and nuggets. So I'm all right with it. Hold on, let me see. Half or the bottom segment of hour one coming up right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Bottom segment of hour one coming up right here on the show that shakes the Southland. That's Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yes, it's on the radio. I don't get annoyed much. I don't want to be like snobby radio guy, okay? Because I came from the podcast world. But I think because I came from the podcast world and worked my way into radio, it does kind of bother me when people will say this. How's your podcast going? It's a radio show. It's a radio show. And I think the reason that is because when I started a podcast, not everybody had one. So if somebody said that then, it was like, oh yeah, it's great, Plus I didn't have a radio show then. But now that everybody has a podcast, have you listened to some of these? Sometimes I'll go in and I'll go to I use Overcast and I'll search for Clemson, right? I'll just see what's out there. Oh, buddy. Good on some of y'all if y'all can listen to that stuff. Oh, the quality. Sheesh. But you know what? Hey, I'm going to give those guys credit. They're starting somewhere. I always said grab that $19 headset. That's how I got here. $19 headset. Go listen to TigerNet Talk episode 1. Oh, sounds like a train wreck. Sounds like a train wreck. Patrick says, I don't need you staring into my soul when discussing Clemson's historical turnover margin this season. Yeah, that too. All right, let's get Tim on. What's up? Copy. Don't mind if you don't subscribe already to YouTube. Go ahead and do that. And look for our TikTok as well, man. We're trying to get to 1,000 TikTok followers. That's the other reason I like doing the show not like this, because doing the TikToks is easy when I'm not doing it like this. But I might could slice these up in the TikToks. I may try it. Anyway. Let me get Tim on the line, and then we'll get going. Y'all can hear Mike Hugh the other day. That's right.
We're sorry.
That's awkward. All right. I'm sure he'll call us back. When he does, we'll get him on. So. All right. I'll go ahead and record the intro. It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show. This shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you. Legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret joins us. Clemson in the midst of a 3-game homestand. Victory last weekend against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This weekend, more golden helmets in the house as the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets make their way over. Who knows? They may wear their white honeycomb helmets, which a lot of people don't like. I do. And then, of course, the Tigers will face off with North Carolina. All that before venturing to the Midlands to take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Tim, welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Now we wait. Start calling back. Look at y'all seeing how the sausage is made. Could y'all hear the phone ringing and stuff, though? That makes me feel better if you can. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Please leave your message.
What? Oh, well. Tell you what, let's just do segment 4. All right. You could hear it. Cricket wireless over here. All right. Okay. Let me go ahead and do this last segment. He could be recording with Coach Sweeney right now anyway. So we'll just go as long as we can here with this segment. Then we got to stop it. All right. Here we go. Final segment of hour 1, the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. 803-450-0086. Don't forget, coming up, legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret will dive into the nuances of the Tigers and the Yellow Jackets. We'll get his thoughts on Clemson's victory over his alma mater, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Did he have a chance to catch up with Chancey Stuckey? Would love to hear that. And just some of his takeaways from what was easily Clemson's best performance of the season. So much so that I think if you were a naysayer, if you were somebody that thought this season was shot, you probably feel like most of the people who have hit me up and have said, well, that's the team that I thought I would see. That's the team that I was expecting to kick off the year. Speaking of which, Bobby, listening to the program in New Jersey, says, Swanee, let's hope we keep it going after the Notre Dame win and we see the team we thought we were going to have this year. P.S. Coming in for this weekend's game, you're going to be anywhere pregame. Let me think about that for a second, Bobby. I think I have soccer. I hope my wife's not listening because she's going to say, no, it's not that. Yeah, we do have soccer, but that's not why I'm not going to be there. We've got a 90th birthday celebration to get to. Not my wife's 90th, but we do have a 90th birthday celebration to get to. So we're going to be doing that on Saturday, right in the midst of the Tigers and the Yellow Jackets. Noon kickoff back on ABC. And again, for Dabo Swinney and Clemson, just to keep it going, keep that momentum. It's a huge thing. I mean, I just talked about it a minute ago with the play calling and Lane Kiffin and the way, coaches and shooters and everybody can kind of get hot in those moments. Well, to me, that's kind of where Clemson is right now. And, I think they've obviously got to ride the hot hand. Dabo Swinney saying as much in terms of the running back situation. It's not going to preclude or prevent Will Shipley from getting carries this weekend, assuming that he's 100% ready to go and feeling good on game day. But it does sound like that they're going to at least give Moffitt the chance to tote the load and run with it and see if they can continue to have the success that they had this past weekend against Notre Dame. And I think that's part of the reason that you see Clemson with a fairly comfortable spread against a better than expected. I'll say that. How about that? A better than expected Georgia Tech team who's 4-2 in the Atlantic Coast Conference right now. Clemson with a 14.5 point favorites. The over/under 55.5 heading into that ball game this weekend. Now, additionally, if you look at who Georgia Tech lost to, that tells some of the story as well. 39-34. Remember how competitive they were with Louisville? A lot of people were surprised that the Cardinals won that game. Now you see what Louisville is. They lost to Ole Miss. We just talked about the Rebels. 48-23. That was the third game of the season. Now, losing to Bowling Green is incomprehensible, inexcusable. If you weren't, in what is Key in his first full year, second full year? I'd have to go look. I can't remember. I think it's his first full season, Brent Key. If you weren't in your first full season, that's that kind of fireable offense type loss. And then they lost to Boston College, who, mind you, is a now resurgent Boston College ball club. But they beat North Carolina on October the 28th, 46-42. Walloped Virginia last weekend, 45-17. Haynes King, the quarterback, is the transfer from from Texas A&M to Georgia Tech. And he's been really good this season. You know what happened in that game against Miami, that 72-yard drive or whatever it was in the waning moments of that game. But if you look at his passing numbers this season, King's been solid for them and a great pickup. He's not just a guy that can throw the ball. He's a guy that can also do some damage with his legs. He's 179 of 283 for 2,330 yards, 22 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And I would imagine, by the way things have gone for the Aggies, that they probably wish that the young fellow from Longview, Texas was still playing for them, quite frankly. But let me look at his rushing numbers real quick because I did not have them with me. On the ground this season, 76 carries, 545 yards, 5 touchdowns. He may very well be statistically at this point maybe the most versatile quarterback the Clemson's faced, given what they've got him doing. And when you look at how limited they used him at Texas A&M in terms of the running game, there's no wonder that Brent Key's been willing to give this kid, put the ball in his hand, let him make plays. And he's done that. And he is the straw that really stirs the drink right now for this Georgia Tech team as they sit alone in third place in the ACC. Florida State 7-0, Louisville 5-1, Georgia Tech 4-2. Yet your Tigers, who sit about as far up from the bottom as Tech does from the top, are favored pretty heavily in this game. And I think it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. I think the belief is that Clemson, found that spark, found a little fire this weekend. And with that, I think people think they're going to finish the season strong. I do. Even the vibe that I feel about the team, the confidence. Now, they still had they had plenty of mistakes. But there was something in that game against Notre Dame that I think just made people feel better about that situation, about the game against Georgia Tech, the game against North Carolina, the game against South Carolina. A lot of football left to be played, that's for sure. Quick break. We'll come back. Hour 2. Tim Bourret joins the program. All right. Well, that was nice to be able to get that segment in before we get Tim on. Yeah, go watch Haynes King play, man. If you haven't seen that kid play, he's a little baller. He's a hustler. I like him. They did not like him at Texas A&M though. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. All right. Upload this file, and then I got to call Tim. Let's see. Maybe he texted. Oh, no text. All right. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Do you like seeing how the sausage is made for the radio? Because that's what you get now. Get to see how I'll slice it up? All right, let's try more.
I'm here. I'm so sorry. I was meeting with Al Adams, my buddy, and forgot all about it.
No, you're good. You're good. We're gonna record it.
I'm good.
Yeah, we're gonna record it live too, so we're good to go.
I'm ready to go.
All right, perfect, man. No problem. No problem. I already did the intro, so I'll cut it in, and the people watching on the stream are getting a little behind the scenes sneak peek at how we do the show.
Okay.
So it's kind of fun for them. All right, here we are, Tim. You ready?
Yep.
And he joins us as he does every Thursday, Tim Bourret. Tim, what's going on, man? Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great, Lawton. Got a real busy weekend coming up. Don and I are doing basketball at 9:30 in Asheville on Friday night. We got a noon football game in Clemson on Saturday, and then back to Asheville on Sunday.
You guys are longtime traveling companions, I guess. Do you have any great stories for us from the road?
Ooh, God, I can't think any off the top of my head. But
I mean, are y'all like a lot of like stops at convenience stores, like a little Mountain Dew and what's the go-to traveling snacks?
No, I will say this though, that the first time I went to a Buc-ee's, we were going somewhere through Florence on the way somewhere. I can't remember where it was, and so yeah, my first Buc-ee's experience, and Don took a lot of pictures of us and put them on Facebook. He was very excited to show me Buc-ee's.
Yeah, Don seems like he would be a seasoned Buc-ee's veteran, if you will.
Yes, I think he is. Yes.
So the Tigers had arguably their best performance. I don't know if it's an argument, Tim. Had their best performance of the college football season against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this past weekend. Your alma mater. Certainly a lot to take away from that one from both sides for you. But what did you take away from what you saw from Clemson, especially in that first half?
Well, at the end of the first half broadcast, I said, Dabo Swinney has been saying this is a good Clemson team, but you just haven't been able to see it because of the turnovers and other mistakes. And I said, this is what Clemson is capable of doing when it doesn't make mistakes. And had a 15-point lead at the half, played well defensively, especially in the red zone, played well offensively. Of course, had the pick six by Trotter. Made some mistakes in the second half, but wasn't enough to overcome. And the other thing that stuck out to me is what Clemson did to Notre Dame defensively, the last 6 drives, Notre Dame had to take over the ball on its own 14 or worse, and just had a couple of first downs, never crossed midfield.
Well, and you bring that up, and I think about the punting job that Aiden Swanson did, and I know that you also had the quick kick by Kay Klubnik, but just in general, Clemson's had a lot of really good punters come through. But in terms of what you needed to do to close out that game, I mean, Swanson looked like he had his sandwich out, Tim. He was unbelievable.
He was. As a team, we had 6 punts inside the 20. The record is 7. Kevin Laird actually had 7 punts inside the 20 in a game once. But yeah, these were deep inside the 22. We had a couple inside the 10, and a kind of a strange thing occurred to me in that it was almost better off that Clemson didn't drive and kick a field goal, because it would have just stopped this monotonous negative rhythm Notre Dame was in. I just wondered if we had kicked a field goal and Notre Dame ran a kickoff back to the 30-yard line, they might have gone down and scored a touchdown, but they were just those punts put them in such a defeatist attitude. And Notre Dame Clemson was so fired up on defense. I think that made a difference.
Well, and then offensively, 36 carries for Phil Maffa, toting the load. I think tied the record. Is that right? With former Clemson running back from my neck of the woods down in Allendale, South Carolina, Mr. Raymond Priester.
Yes. And a guy named Jim Shirley also did it long ago. Now, the Raymond Priester game was at Maryland. I was at that game. He had 36 carries for 209 yards. At one point in the fourth quarter, Raymond carried the ball 12 consecutive plays, which is the Clemson record for the same running back carrying the ball in consecutive plays. I still remember how fired up the Clemson team was in the locker room after the game, that they were. Of course, Ty West loved it because he loved that type of football where you had a real physical offensive line football. The other team knew what you were going to do, and they couldn't stop you. And Maffa was just terrific. I did actually say on the pregame show when we asked for the keys of the game, I said, well, whichever number 7 has a better game, running the ball, because I knew that Maffa was going to be the starter and play the majority of the snaps. Estime got off to a great start, 82 yards in the first half, and had only 5 in the second.
Oh, look, the opening, I guess it was the opening play, maybe the second play, when Estime hurdled 2 people. I said to
how about that?
I said to myself, oh boy, this is going to be a long day if he's running the ball like this, because that kid is a stud.
He is. Yeah, I don't know how much they call him the baby bus, and he kind of does run the way Jerome Bettis used to run. Jerome was number 6. He's number 7. Not quite as big as Jerome, but I think he's going to have a great career as a pro.
Again, Tim Bourret joins us every Thursday to talk about your Clemson Tigers, the previous matchups, the upcoming matchups. We'll get to Clemson and Georgia Tech, quite the historic rivalry between these two teams, ties with John Heisman, always a great topic there. But before we do that, I do want to get kind of the tenor and the feel out of South Bend with the people that you're still connected with there, with Marcus Freeman. I know it's a hungry, passionate fan base, but 3 losses this season. It's an impatient fan base, if you will. But I feel like they've got the right guy, Tim. I just do. I get a vibe about coaches at different jobs, and I get a vibe that if they will be patient, I think they will have a lot of success under him. But what are you hearing from the people that are maybe frustrated by a 7-3 season at this point?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think Marcus Freeman's a good coach. He's going to do a good job. He might need to get a little bit more experience on the offensive side of the football. I kind of think they may get a new offensive coordinator. They went after 3 different guys especially the guy who's the offensive coordinator at Utah. And something happened there where they didn't end up getting him. He actually came to a hockey game last year with Coach Freeman, and they introduced him, and everybody thought, well, he's going to be the guy. But something happened in regard to his buyout. They didn't end up getting him. But, I think what I had to laugh at was that really the response I got from my Notre Dame friends was the same as the response I got from my Clemson friends and fans the previous week. A lot of frustration and all, and coming into the game, Notre Dame fans were, the last two games have beaten Southern Cal, scored 48 points, beat Pittsburgh and scored 58 points.
Yeah.
And I think there were four touchdowns on returns in those games. So the offense wasn't quite as good as the score indicated, but I saw a lot of frustrating comments either sent direct to me or on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And actually, I got one right after I was interviewing Coach Sweeney on the post-game show, and read it to him, and I think it ended at the text that I received in is, "I'm not sure this guy's going to make it," and Dabo just started laughing like, wow, it's the same, it's the same. Not just Clemson, that's for sure. It's the same everywhere.
It is, man. College football fans, they are just that fanatical about their football teams. And that's why we love having you on to give us the inside scoop there with the situation in South Bend, if you will, and kind of the tenor of some of the fans after that loss. And I told you before the game, Tim, you couldn't win for losing. It was going to, one way or the other, you're going to get those text messages. But let's turn our attention.
I was going to get happy texts and bad texts no matter what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, no matter what, it was going to be that way. Well, let's turn our attention to Georgia Tech. Obviously, Dabo Sweeney now has eclipsed legendary Clemson head coach Frank Howard for the all-time wins mark. That was a big deal. Love getting that off his plate, I'm sure. But now they face off with one of their top rivals of all time. And for a long time, Clemson went over to Atlanta to play this game.
Yes, absolutely. And that happened because Coach Howard was also the athletic director and wanted to balance the budget. So Coach Dodd would give him a good guarantee to go over there. And I think he only won in 1945 and his last year. I don't think they went every year, but almost every year. But yeah, 1969 was his last year, and we've got a picture in the file of Charlie Waters amongst others, carrying Coach Howard off the field. But they finally came to Clemson in 1974, and the Tigers won that game, and then the series halted after 1977, and then came back when Georgia Tech joined the ACC. It's interesting how things were. So Georgia Tech joined the ACC for the 79-80 season, but they didn't start competing for the ACC championship until 1983. It was 1983 before we played them in football, and they got the schedule worked out. Today, when teams transfer conferences, they're playing the very next year.
Yeah, I'm taking a look too. The other thing that probably shocks a lot of people, just kind of given where these two teams have been in, say, since the 1980s, the fact that Clemson trails this series by 16 games. I think it's 51-35-2 in favor of the Yellow Jackets. A big part of that, obviously, what you just mentioned with going over to Atlanta and playing those games. But how many opponents, Tim, that Clemson plays regularly do they trail? Is it Georgia Tech and am I missing somebody else?
Definitely trail Georgia. Let's see. In the ACC, we're ahead of NC State and North Carolina and Virginia. Wake Forest, we're ahead of Wake Forest. And Duke, so we have all the Big Four schools. So as far as the traditional ACC schools, I believe we lead all of them except for Georgia State. Now, Florida State has the lead against Clemson, but the two teams have only played since 1992 in the conference. Actually, first played Florida State in 1975.
Yeah, I would imagine most people grab when they get the notes or something and see this, they probably think they must have typed that wrong. I mean, seriously.
But I think Clemson has a 25-16 lead since Georgia Tech joined the ACC, and obviously has a really good record. I think it's 16-6 in games played at Clemson.
And then one of the other kind of unique things that we always touch on with this series was the streak of 3-point victories, I guess you would say, or margin of victory that took place between these two teams. Tell fans about that and just this kind of significance of that coming together season after season.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody ever researched it, but it's got to be the only yearly series where 6 years in a row. It was 6 years in a row. Yeah, from 90. Was it 97 to 02, or was it 96 to 01? Anyway, there were 6 years in a row. The game was decided by exactly 3 points, not 3 points or less, exactly 3 points.
Yeah.
And just and some of the games were high scoring where you wouldn't think. I know in consecutive ties playing Atlanta, Georgia Tech won 45-42. That was in 1999. And then Clemson won 47-44 in 2001. So we had 3 wild games in a row with Georgia Tech, 99, 2000, and 2000.
Yeah, I think I'm looking here. I think it was a little earlier than that. I got 96, 97,
96 to 01.
98, yeah, 96 to 01, yeah. I mean, and they
think
really were. They were. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think 2002 is 24-19.
02, let's see. 02, 24-19, yes. 24-19.
24-19.
Tommy Bowden and Chan Gailey.
Yeah. There must have been a safety that called off at some point that kept it from being a three-pointer. But and then Clemson ended the streak of close games in 2003, game in which Tony Elliott caught a touchdown pass from Charlie Whitehurst. Clemson clobbered Georgia Tech. I want to say it was 39-3, and their quarterback had beaten Auburn earlier in the season, and he had said some things that Clemson wasn't nearly as good as Auburn, and they expected to win. He was very braggadocious about it. So those ended up on the bulletin board, and Clemson hammered them pretty good.
Well, Tiger fans may remember a couple of years ago, Clemson put 73 on the Yellow Jackets in Atlanta, but that's not the largest margin of victory. It was 73-7 in 2020. You had to go all the way back to when John Heisman was coaching at Clemson. 73-0 back in 1903, still the largest margin of victory for the Tigers in the series. Georgia Tech beat Clemson in 1944, 51-0. Oof. Tim, those are some blowouts, buddy.
Yeah, that's 73-0. So that was a great team under John Heisman. Clemson had beaten Georgia 29-0 earlier in the season. And so after the game, the Georgia players got with the Clemson players and said, "We will give you a bushel of apples for every point you beat Georgia Tech by, worse than what you beat us by." And so I kiddingly wrote in the column Sunday that the Clemson guys in 1903 must have loved apple pie because they beat Georgia Tech 73-0 at the end of the season. There were 44 bushels of apples that were delivered to the Clemson campus from the Georgia football team.
A bushel of apples from the Peach State. There you go. Tim Bourret here with us.
Well, for every point. So it's 44 bushels of apples.
Yeah. 44 bushels of apples from the Peach State for the Tigers back in 1903. Unbelievable. And a great rivalry. And again, they'll connect at noon. You can watch it on ABC, but of course you can listen to Don Munson and Tim Bourret and Reggie Merriweather. And matter of fact, I'll tell you what I've been enjoying, Tim, is when I don't go to the games, I can get you guys kind of synced up with the TV. That's always great. That's always a fun way to listen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Tiger fans will have to do that
Very good.
as well. We'll talk to Tim next week. Tim, always appreciate you and look forward to talking with you next Thursday right here on the program, my man.
Sounds good, Lon.
Tim Bourret here on a Thursday afternoon. 803-450-0086. I did see a message from my sister a little late wanting to hear Tim's story about how he landed at Clemson. I'll tell you what, we will get with him on that next week. We'll open with that one as the Tigers prepare to take on the North Carolina Tar Heels next weekend. All right, 803-450-0086. If you're watching the show live, got to pull down that Tim Bourret branding, get the L Swan branding on. We got a break coming up. We'll hit that. And if you're watching live, we're going to hang it up with you guys. And we're going to come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Don't forget tomorrow, not only will we have Luke Winstall on the program, we'll have Tommy Bowden on the program, and the Clemson Tiger women's head basketball coach going to be on the program with us as well. Amanda Butler going to join us and talk about their recruiting class. So should be a lot of fun. Again, if you're watching the live stream, thank you for hanging out with us for about an hour and 17 minutes. I hope you like seeing a little bit behind the curtain of how we do the show live on Fox Sports Radio 1400. And for everybody listening to us on the radio or on the iHeart app or on Amazon Echoes and Google Home devices, stick with us. We'll be right back with more of the show that shakes the Southland.